Good afternoon. Welcome to Kingston, Jamaica, man. Hey, everybody here says that. Everybody here said that in email saying, I hear you're going to Jamaica, man. So you got to put it in there. I want to thank all those who helped Anglican TV show up at the last minute to Kingston. It was really worth the trip. I'm here with my friend George Conger of Living Church, Church of England News, a couple other
anybody who's willing to pay the freight.
Freelance, extraordinaire, Orthodox journalist, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm Kevin Carlson of Anglican TV, and amongst the birds, the wind, and the fountains behind us, we're going to discuss a little bit what happened here at the Anglican Consultative Council number 14. First, it's important that you know what the Anglican Consultative Council does. We'll just call it ACC now. Now we know they call it ACC. It's so difficult to pronounce, but what does it do?
ACC is a consultative body. Its middle name is what it does. It doesn't have any legislative, legal, juridical, any authority in any way to compel anybody to do anything. It has no ability to raise money other than the gifts it receives, and it is a consultative group that talks over policy and likes to set general trends or directions. In recent years, it's been called an instrument of unity in the Anglican Communion, but again, that has no official standing for anyone or anything. It's just a way of describing its function within the wider church.
So when stuff like that, big things like the covenants to be discussed, why do they send it on to the ACC?
Well, people within the structures of the church like to say the ACC is the most representative body, meaning its delegates are bishops, priests, and laymen and women. And it is a second body akin to the Lambeth Conference in some ways, with a primates meeting, and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Those four make up those instruments of unity as sort of the international official voice of Anglicanism. But it's not the official voice of Anglicanism. Okay.
Well, Rowan Williams is himself every day. Lambeth meets every 10 years. How often does the ACC meet?
The ACC meets every 3 years, but it has a body called the Standing Committee, which the Standing Committee of the Primates meeting and the ACC, they're called the Joint Standing Committee, or JSC for short, they meet once to twice a year. They last met in November 2008, and they'll meet again in this, they had this meeting, and then they'll meet again probably November of 2009.
Okay. Now, the big thing coming in here was what we call the Windsor Continuation Group Report, or what we would call the Anglican Covenant was being discussed.
Yes.
And of that, the covenant in its current form is designed to be something that all Anglican provinces and dioceses can sign on to.
Yes.
Part of the early discussion in the week was, why would we allow dioceses to sign on to this?
Well, in that particular instance, dioceses in the United States and other parts of the world where their provinces might be hesitant to sign on, a diocese could say, okay, we sign on, we affirm all this, we could take it on board as part of who and what we are. And then there are countries like Australia where the national church is a weak institution and the diocese individually run the show. So dioceses and other ecclesial entities, meaning the Anglican Communion in North America, ACNA, could sign it and be in tune with the mind of the wider communion on this Anglican covenant.
So the fear would be that America would be represented by TEC signing it and ACNA signing it.
Yes, in fact, Ian Douglas, a clergy delegate to this meeting, in the discussions over the covenant, said that if we allow anybody to sign this who is not a member already of the ACC as a province, meaning only the Episcopal Church, I'm from Central Florida, if we allow only the Episcopal Church and not the Diocese of Central Florida or other people to sign, we prevent the problem of having the Diocese of Pittsburgh and Fort Worth and Quincy and San Joaquin and the other members of the ACNA sign on, because that creates a valid question for the next ACC meeting, Ian Douglas said, of there being more than one Anglican presence in North America. So his argument was, don't allow anybody to sign but the national churches.
They had a big vote yesterday on this. The vote was about whether to send this to the provinces as it is, or to send it back to committee to discuss and have them send it out to province for whatever reason. Paragraph A, paragraph B, C, and then paragraph 4 are what we're talking about here, or resolution A, B, C, and 4. It's all kind of confusing, and I'm not the expert on it, but let's try and put this into terms. What does paragraph 4 say that they were really upset about?
Well, I think, let
Should
me
I
just
back up,
take
sir?
one backup step.
Okay.
The beginning of this meeting, the Archbishop of Canterbury said, we want to get away from Western models of decision-making and strict rules of parliamentary procedure.
Who said this?
Rowan Williams.
Okay.
And we had Indaba discernment groups, where members would break apart into small groups, probably sit cross-legged on the floor with Peter, Paul, and Mary music playing in the background, and discuss issues akin to being in an African tribal council. This would broaden our diversity of communications and understanding, because the Anglican Communion is more than just a British parliamentary institution. So that was what you went into. We have these sort of consensus-building groups. Meanwhile, we have the Resolutions Committee, which would hear the reports from these different bodies, these discernment groups, and they then wrote a resolution about the Anglican Covenant. And this is where the skullduggery begins.
Big word.
Yes. And as the final result, as the Archbishop of the Middle East, Munir Nis, said, it's illegal. The whole process was illegal. It's flawed. It has no moral legitimacy, but it doesn't matter because that's what they're going to do.
Sure.
I've given you the very beginning and the very end. Now we have to describe an incredibly convoluted political shenanigans and maneuverings. Now, you were mentioning Part A.
Right.
The Resolution Committee, listening to the concerns of these discernment groups, wrote 2 resolutions about the covenant. One was called Part A, one was called Part B. Among the discernment groups, one of them, and only one, said, we're concerned about Section 4 of the covenant. There's Section 1, 2, and 3, and Section 4 was the one that was most recently revised.
Did I still sit with my hair?
No.
Okay.
The bird has moved on.
That's good.
He's just above you now, actually. Section 4 deals with disciplinary mechanisms.
Right.
Now, conservatives, when this covenant came out, were saying these disciplinary mechanisms are very weak, but the Episcopal Church was saying, oh, these are too strong.
Sure.
One discernment group, and we'll nod and wink and go hint, hint, guess which one, said, we want to put Section 4 to one side. Pass 1, 2, and 3, which are fine because they have high-sounding words and phrases about what it means to be Anglican, but we need to put 4 aside and have more time to discuss.
Right.
And there was Section A was the Resolution Committee's decision, and the Resolution Committee was made up of 4 people, 3 of whom are from churches who don't want the covenant.
Sure.
New Zealand, Scotland, and the United States. Ian Douglas was a representative to the Resolutions Committee.
That's perfect.
And they put together this resolution that the first thing the ACC is going to vote on is this one group's problem with Section 4. So they framed from the very beginning of the debate the American Church's concerns about this is too strict. And that was Section A. And I interrupted you at that point.
That's all right.
And may I get this ant off your face?
I have an ant on my face.
Well, let me rub it in.
Stop. All right.
No, it's more of a, not an ant, it's more of a
It's a biting
centipede.
ant. That's right. That's perfect. I'm not going to pick anything out of your face. So that's where you interrupted me. Well, to get the explanation of yesterday, they framed this whole debate on what America doesn't like about it.
Yes.
And they had a vote. And the vote, they originally said, paragraph A, we're going to throw away. We're voting it down. And we're not going to send this covenant back to be discussed at the committee level. We're going to send it to the provinces and let them look at it.
Yes. The Episcopal Church in the debates on Section A, said we don't want this to come up. It needs more work. It needs to be reviewed. Send 1, 2, and 3 out to the provinces, and Section 4 will work. And in the fullness of time, I'm sure we can find an agreement that we like that will allow the communion to go forward with.
So at 3:15 p.m. yesterday, that was voted out.
That was voted out by a margin of 17 to 41, I believe.
Wow. And so there was Peter Aspinall had a new resolution after lunch that they brought to the table, and it was a very confusing resolution to most of the people in there, all the delegates. And
Yes, what happened was originally the resolution committee had 2 parts. Section A, which in essence got rid of Part 4,
right,
and Section B, which affirmed Part 4 and everything else. So you were given a choice of 2. Well, after Section A was voted down, Philip Aspinall, who's the Archbishop of Australia.
I meant Philip, yeah.
Philip Aspinall, he then proposed a new resolution C, which brought back A. And at that point, the fun begins, because parliamentary procedure becomes very tricky and devious at this point.
Sure. Well, what I saw was a shell game. You know, basically, they had a ball under some shells and they moved it around because Munir said, this is illegal. What are you doing? You're so out of business construct here, I can't follow it. The Nigerians over at the other table, where I don't understand it. The people who had English as a first language sitting right in front of me, what is this?
Well, what happened technically, and I'm sure this will be fascinating to everybody out there.
Yeah.
Section C was put forward by Philip Aspinall before the final vote on A was taken.
Right.
So technically, the issue was preserved. A was voted down, but the substance of A was preserved in a motion introduced by Philip Aspinall to B. So we're talking about A. He says, I want to amend B. Okay, fine. We'll get to that later. So he preserves the issue. Then a South African delegate, Janet Trask, introduces portions of Philip Aspinall's C, which includes the parts that bring back A. It sounds like algebra class.
It's really bad.
And at that point, the chairman of the meeting, Bishop Patterson of New Zealand, said, we've already voted this down.
Yeah.
I don't think we should. And before he finished, Rowan Williams got up and said, Rowan Williams, believe that some people were confused and thought by voting down A, they get a chance later to vote for C. So I think we should allow this, these are my words, this breach of parliamentary procedure to allow a motion already rejected to be reconsidered. Munir Anis of Egypt said, no, that violates parliamentary procedure. Bishop Patterson said, thank you very much. You can sit down now. And the vote was taken, and by a vote of 33 to 31, I believe, or 33 to 30, A was revived by inserting it from C into B. Now, then there was even more confusion because they voted to make the amendment, but then they didn't vote on the amendment as a whole.
Right. In Robert's rules, you have a motion, and then you can vote on another.
You make the amendment, the amendment is changed, and then you vote on the amended resolution.
Right. Yep.
They never did.
Right.
At that point, said, okay, business is done, and chaos ensued.
Right.
And the Archbishop of Canterbury in the tea break spent 45 minutes, and you filmed this with being good boy, the sound was off, being furious that he had done something really stupid.
Yeah.
So the Archbishop of Canterbury, I talked to some delegates. Some delegates, one was from a French-speaking part of Africa, who speaks very poor English, but he can get by. He voted against A, but then he understood the Archbishop to say, vote for this. So he changed his vote. And another delegate from a Western country understood the same thing. I spoke to 2 more delegates who voted against A, and they say, well, we understood the Archbishop to say, we're voting against, we're just doing a housekeeping
Right.
maneuver to clean up stuff, and we're not to change our original votes.
Right. If you voted against A, you need to vote for C. Right.
And so here you've got utter confusion. Because the Archbishop of Canterbury was vague. Imagine that. He was ambiguous, he was vague, and his words were taken literally
Sure.
rather than in a figurative, interpretive sense.
Well, a lot of people are like, was this on purpose? Is this some greater strategy to keep this out of TEC having to worry about this at the next General Convention?
Well, when this happened, I said there's one or two things have happened. Either there's duplicity on the part of the Archbishop of Canterbury, which I couldn't imagine because it went against everything he had been saying all week, or this was a colossal, boneheaded mistake. Well, I don't think it's duplicity, and I don't think it was a colossal, boneheaded mistake. I just think the Archbishop of Canterbury isn't a good communicator.
Right.
He didn't explain what he wanted, and the result was the covenant has. We've had all this. We've spent $500,000 to have this meeting, and we have no covenant.
Right.
And it's going to be another year before we get something that even could be called the covenant.
Well, let's talk about the timing then. A lot of the worry in the Episcopal Church was that they would have to deal with this at General Convention. We're both Americans, and what happens at General Convention affects us in one way or another. And they don't have to deal with this at all now.
Because there is no covenant.
There's no covenant.
There's no covenant.
You know.
We decided not to decide.
Yeah. One of the things this would have done is, in a legal sense, if you're not in the covenant, you're not part of the Anglican Church.
Yes, but all of this is now speculation. Because there is no covenant.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Right.
And this has been taken out of the hands of the Covenant Design Group, who put in 2-3 years since 2005 in writing this thing. And it's now going to be given to a committee appointed by the Archbishop of Canterbury, reporting to the Joint Standing Committee. And Canon Kieran at the next meeting will talk with the new head of the Joint Standing Committee to get this started.
But we can
in
imagine
November. It's just
if it's not in the Covenant Design Group again, it's going to come back without paragraph 4.
It could. It depends if they decide to put Archbishop Peter Akinole as chairman of this committee, he could come back with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The end is not foreseen. What this did was it bought time for the Episcopal Church.
Sure.
The litigation will continue. As last night when we interviewed some of the African archbishops and primates, their point was that they feel they are being driven out of the Anglican Communion. So not only does Bob Duncan feel that he's been driven out of the Episcopal Church,
Sure.
Munir Anis, Archbishop of the Middle East, feels he's being driven out of the Anglican Communion.
Sure.
That the Episcopal Church wants it all.
Yeah. And we can see that. I mean, they now have, and the timeline goes out to 2014 when I saw it, all those years to take care of the legal business of fighting for the churches they want to keep, of deposing conservative bishops and priests. They have all this free time because there is no more covenant at all right now. It's just something being talked about in small groups.
But you know, it's not all bad news because the moratoriums on same-sex blessings and on gay bishops, or bishops, partnered bishops and whatever, has been renewed and reaffirmed. But if you break it, so what?
Yeah,
There's no covenant.
And we have video of same-sex marriages in LA. We have interviews with the bishops who are openly gay. There doesn't seem,
Bishop.
Bishop. No, there's a couple English ones.
Oh,
Sorry. Or Scottish too.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's growing in the wrong ways, and there's just no accountability.
Right.
And this is the same discussion we had in Tanzania. This is the same discussion, we've had in all these times these people get together, primates or ACC or Lambeth.
This is my 4th or 5th ACC meeting, and though the nouns change, the verbs are exactly the same.
Right.
that we've got the same problem and the same solution has been done each time. A new committee will once and for all resolve this problem. And I think it's telling that at this time out, there were no members of the secular press, meaning no one from the BBC or any of the British papers, the Associated Press. The entire press corps was church publications or church in-house news agencies.
Sure.
Because the Anglican Communion's death rattle has been rattling for 10 years. And it's still not
BBC,
quite yet
we're about
dead.
to break up. Oh, okay,
I'm not
whatever.
dead yet. It's like a Monty Python routine.
Well, what I see is, every time there's a hostage situation and there's somebody on the phone, they want to locate them, they draw it out longer. We want to get the location, keep them on the phone, keep them on the phone. We're trying to, keep this thing going as long as possible. This started out with Williams and Minier, and everybody say the Anglican Communion is crumbling and about to fall. Well, we're leaving here and nothing's changed, and we're just going about our business.
And they went through this great song and dance about Indaba and all this politically correct stuff about diversity and using non-Western ways of decision-making. And what did we do? We had as slick a parliamentary maneuver as you could see. This was pure British Westminster-style parliamentary politics of, by slickly maneuvering.
This is House of Lords 101.
It's many things.
Yes. I was being kind, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it was a shell game. It was using ethnicity and diversity against those who are diverse from British and Western society.
The Archbishop of Egypt, we're referring to him, I'm referring to him fairly often, because not all archbishops are here. He's the representative on the standing committee from the Middle East and India. Now, Archbishop Minier did yeoman's work here. He really was a consistent, principled spokesman for the conservative movement. So that's why I keep mentioning him. But Archbishop Minier got up and said on several occasions, in the plenary session and last night, as well as the Nigerian delegation said last night, for people whose English is a fourth or fifth language, or people who don't follow it, they do not understand the subtlety of some of the parliamentary language and procedures. There was a motion put forward by Archbishop Minier we have these three moratoria, excuse me. The first is gay bishops, gay blessings, border crossings, and Minier wanted to add a fourth, which is an end to litigation, no more lawsuits. And that was first brought up and passed by the primates in Dar es Salaam. Minier wanted to have the ACC recognize this. Well, they voted on it, and the Episcopal Church made all these squeaks and noises, and the Archbishop of Canterbury got up and spoke and wasn't quite clear what was going on, and we had the vote, and it lost. Munir's motion lost, like 31 to 33, and as they were filing out, I asked one guy what did you vote? He said, I voted against it. I said, well, why? He said, well, we chatted, and he said, well, what does litigation mean?
Sure.
English is his fifth language.
Yep.
It is his fifth language.
Sure.
I mean, he's got his native language.
French, Swahili, and all those down the line.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
And it would have been considered if somebody had explained to him what litigation meant. Lawsuits.
Oh, well, that's different.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were voting on that.
No. I mean, a common one, even between the West and Europe, is scheme. For a British person, that means to plan.
Yes.
For an American, that means to plan underhandedly.
Yes.
And so, there's such a gap in our
and there's Indian English and there's African English.
Yep. Absolutely.
And this system is run on a British parliamentary system where the words are British words, where the rules are the British rules, but we have all these nods to cultural and ethnic diversity. But that's just all smoke and mirrors, because at the end of the day, it is hardball politics. But I think what is important, what I see as the political end of those controlling the process is not the victory of the United States' position, but just keeping the game going.
Sure.
kicking it down. They don't want the Episcopal Church to win because they know full well that 3/4 of those people would walk out.
Yeah.
They
true.
just want to keep. We're in overtime number 25 now.
Well, for you and I, it's job security. But
Nobody's paying to read these stories anymore. It's the same story.
It's the same story over. You could print the same stuff we wrote in Tanzania for this.
Yes, except I don't have food poisoning and malaria this time around.
No, but so onward. After this, it's General Convention. It looked like a bird dropping from my side. I'm going to edit this part out. From here, we go to General Convention, and they don't have anything to worry about here, but they may take up and take out BO 22 whatever.
BO 33.
BO 330 out.
Well, we had the Archbishop of Canterbury warning against doing that.
Right.
And the Windsor Continuation Group report.
Which, for BO 33, for those new to the program, is the moratorium on electing anybody, bishop or clergy, who would be offensive to the rest of the communion.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a code word for gay bishop.
But, it almost became code word for Bishop Lawrence.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Whose manner of life is upsetting to
Yes,
some
it was.
people.
So there's a chance that they'll take those things out, which is no big deal because they really didn't mean anything, except they were just a constitutional.
There was a symbolic pledge to be good boys and girls. Now, the Windsor Continuation Group has put forward some recommendations about how to behave and how to have mediated conversation and more of the same sort of. We're going to have, a few years ago we had the Archbishop of Canterbury's panel of reference, where people in dispute could take their dispute to the Archbishop of Canterbury, would appoint a committee, and the committee would mediate, and we would have happiness.
Right.
Well, that was a total fiasco because, for instance, in the case of the Diocese of Florida, we had some parishes that sought mediation. They did everything the panel of reference wanted. The panel of reference made some recommendations, and the Bishop of Florida said, no, I'm going to sue them anyway.
Okay.
Well, we now have pastoral visitors who will do the exact same thing that the panel of reference does, except this time it'll really work.
Well, on with that good note, I want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to thank my good friend George Conger of Freelance World.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll catch you back at General Convention in June
That'll
to
be
July.
fun.
That'll be fun. We'll both be there, and we'll have some updates for you then as well. Thank you for watching Anglican TV. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger.
See you soon.